The sound of my daughter's cry still lives in my body. Not the regular cry. The one that comes when she's startled. The one that comes when she's been hurt. It was late April, around 3 p.m. on a Thursday, at my parents' house. The living room was humid and golden with spring light. My daughter had been playing with blocks near the coffee table, and my sister, she's 17, old enough to know better, was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. When my daughter accidentally kicked one of her feet, she did something I won't forget. She just hit her. Not hard, not with fists, but enough that my 1-year-old's body went rigid. My mom was in the kitchen. I heard her clearly, the words coming flat and quick. Kids do that. She'll be fine. But my daughter wasn't fine. Something in me wasn't fine either. There was this gap between what had just happened and what my mother had just said. And I could feel myself falling into that gap. I didn't know I was about to find out how deep it went. Here's what I need you to understand. This wasn't the first time. The first time was about 6 months earlier, maybe October. My sister had been babysitting while I went to a doctor's appointment. Just 40 minutes. When I came back, my daughter had a scratch on her cheek. A small one, barely visible. I asked what happened. She fell, my sister said. Off what? I don't know. She was crawling around. I remember looking at my daughter's face, at the precise angle of that scratch. Too deliberate to be an accident. But I let it go. I was tired. I was a new mom, and I was constantly second-guessing myself. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe kids just fell and got mysterious scratches. Then there was the incident with the sippy cup. My sister was feeding her lunch. I was upstairs folding laundry. I heard my daughter cry, and I came down to find my sister holding the cup tight, forcing it toward my daughter's mouth even though she was pulling away. When I asked her to stop, my sister rolled her eyes. Literally rolled her eyes at me. She needs to drink, she said, as if I'd asked her to stop feeding a starving child instead of asking her to respect my child's autonomy. My mom watched that happen from the breakfast bar. She was drinking her morning coffee. She didn't say anything. This became the pattern. A series of moments, some small, some bigger, where my sister would be rough with my daughter, and my mom would either ignore it or rationalize it. She's a teenager, she doesn't know her own strength. Your sister loves her niece. You're being overprotective. The last one stung the most because I'd heard it before in other forms. My whole childhood, I was the careful one, the responsible one. I was the daughter who didn't cause trouble, who didn't require emergency room visits or difficult conversations. My sister, by contrast, had always been experimental, free-spirited. And my parents, especially my mom, had always reframed this generously. She was spirited. She was finding herself. I used to think that meant I was the boring one. Then I had a child and suddenly I realized that carefulness my mom had always seen as a flaw in me was actually the thing that kept people safe. But that day in April, everything crystallized. Not because hitting her was new, it wasn't. But because my mother's response was so complete, so total. She didn't even look up from whatever she was doing. She didn't check on my daughter. She didn't tell my sister that wasn't okay. She just erased it. And I felt something shift in my chest. It was hot and tight and focused. I picked up my daughter, held her against me. She was still crying, her small body shaking against mine. I could feel her heart racing. I didn't say anything to my mom or my sister. I just walked upstairs and locked myself in the guest room with her. That's where I made the call to my father. Now, you need context here too. My parents have been married for 35 years, and they are not a matched set. My mom is soft in her firmness. She sets boundaries, but she'll rationalize away the moments they're crossed. My dad is ex-military. Not in the way men say ex-military, because they took one ROTC class in college. I mean, he spent 23 years in active service, ended careers, made decisions that affected hundreds of people. He retired about 5 years ago, and he brought that gravity home with him. I called him at work. He was doing consulting for a defense contractor at the time. "Hey, sweetie," he said. The casual warmth in his voice made something in me break. "What's up?" I told him what had happened. I told him about the scratch, the cup, all of it. I told him that I was at my parents' house, and that I felt like I was losing my mind because nobody else seemed to think any of it was a big deal. He was quiet for maybe 5 seconds. In my father's way of communicating, that's a long time. "I'm leaving work," he said. "I'll be there in 40 minutes. "Dad, you don't have to. I'm leaving now." He was there in 38 minutes. When he arrived, my mom was in the kitchen. My sister was back on her phone in the living room. I was still upstairs with my daughter, who had finally fallen asleep against my chest. I heard the front door open. Heard my dad's heavy, deliberate footsteps across the hardwood. Heard my mom say brightly, "Oh hi, didn't expect to see you today." There was a silence. Then my father's voice came up from downstairs, steady and clear. "I want everyone in the living room in 2 minutes." Not a request. Not when you have a moment. A statement of fact, delivered in the tone of someone used to being obeyed. I came downstairs with my daughter still sleeping in my arms. My mom was already standing. My sister hadn't moved from the couch, but she had put her phone down. My father stood in the center of the living room, still in his work clothes. He looked at my sister first. "What happened at 3 o'clock?" he asked. My sister's face went pale. "I didn't mean to. I didn't ask for an explanation. I asked what happened. I hit her. But just like a... You hit your niece." He turned to my mom. "And you saw this." My mom opened her mouth to respond, but he wasn't finished. "I need you to understand something," he said, and his voice had changed. It was quieter now, but somehow more frightening. "That baby is 1 year old. She is completely dependent on the adults in her care to keep her safe. And she came to you," he gestured to my mom, "trusting that you would protect her. Instead, you told her that what happened was normal, acceptable." "I didn't mean..." My mom tried again. "I know what you meant. You meant to take the path of least resistance. You meant to avoid a difficult conversation with your daughter." He paused. "But what you actually did was teach that child that nobody can be trusted to keep her safe." I felt something crystallize in my own chest as he said it. That was exactly what I'd been feeling. This hollow certainty that nobody had my back. From this moment forward, my father continued, looking directly at my sister. "You do not babysit. You do not watch her alone. And you do not put your hands on her in any way that isn't gentle and asked for. Do you understand?" My sister nodded, tears running down her face. She was 17. She looked very young suddenly. Then he turned to my mom. "And you," he said, "need to decide whether you're a mother to your daughter," he meant me, "or whether you're going to keep choosing comfort over safety. Because those are the only 2 options here." My mom started to cry. "That's not fair," she said. "It's exactly fair," my father replied. "Your job as a parent is to protect your children, not to protect them from consequences, not to keep the peace, to protect them. And when your granddaughter is hurt in your home, and your job is to show her that her safety matters more than anyone's feelings, you failed. And I'm not going to watch you teach my grandchild that lesson anymore." He looked at me then. "You and your daughter are not coming here unless I'm here. And if anything like this happens again, we're looking at legal options." Legal options. My father, who loves my mom, who still comes home most nights and watches television with her on the couch, had just drawn a line in concrete. Nobody spoke. The living room felt smaller somehow, tighter. The light through the windows had shifted. My daughter stirred against my chest, but didn't wake up. My sister got up and left the room. She went upstairs to her bedroom and didn't come back down while we were there. My mom sat on the couch, not looking at any of us. My father sat next to me, and we waited. The next 3 months were quiet. Not peaceful. Just quiet. My mom called me a few times. She apologized, but they were the kind of apologies that came with explanations attached, which meant they weren't really apologies. I'm sorry if you felt like I wasn't supporting you, but I was just trying to help your sister. I'm sorry you were upset, but I don't think it was as serious as your father made it out to be. Each time, I felt myself pulling back a little more. My sister texted me once. She said she was sorry and that she didn't understand why everyone was making such a big deal out of it. She said my dad had overreacted. She said she loved my daughter and would never intentionally hurt her. I didn't respond. But here's the thing about confrontations like that. They don't end the way they do in stories. My father didn't swoop in and save the day, and then everything got better. What actually happened was that my father drew a boundary, and that boundary required maintenance. It required me to maintain it too. 6 months passed. My daughter started talking more, started running instead of crawling. She started being a person with more obvious preferences. And my sister kept trying. She'd ask to babysit. She'd make gestures toward being helpful. And I kept saying no. It was lonely, actually. My sister and I had never been close. She's 5 years younger, and we lived in different worlds, but she was still my sister. Still someone who was there. And now there was this thing between us that I couldn't unfold. My mom started coming to my house instead of asking me to visit hers. That was something. She'd bring groceries, or she'd just sit in my living room and watch my daughter play. And slowly, quietly, she stopped trying to sell me on my sister's character. She just accepted the boundary. But there was a moment, about 8 months after that day, that changed how I thought about the whole thing. I was at the grocery store, and I ran into a woman I'd known in college. We exchanged pleasantries, asked about each other's lives. She mentioned that she'd had a falling out with her own mother over how her mom treated her kids. How her mom always prioritized the person causing harm over the person being harmed, because it was easier, because it involved less conflict. And she said something that caught me. I think she genuinely couldn't see it as harm, because if she saw it that way, she'd have to see herself as having failed. And she couldn't live with that. I thought about my mother a lot after that. Not to excuse her, that's not what I'm saying, but to understand her in a way that was more complete. My mom wasn't malicious. She was scared. She was scared that if she set a hard boundary with my sister would resent her, that their relationship would fracture, that she'd lose her. And so she sacrificed me instead, because she thought she could get me back. Because she thought I'd understand that family is complicated. I did understand that. I still do. But understanding something doesn't mean accepting it. And that was the thing I had to learn. You can love someone and still refuse to let them hurt your child. You can understand someone's fear and still prioritize your own kid's safety. These things aren't contradictory. My father never said, "I told you so." He was just present. More present than he'd been before. He'd pick up my daughter on weekends, take her to his office, yes, his actual office, and work while she played with blocks under his desk. He'd come by my house and fix things that needed fixing. He made sure I knew that I wasn't alone. And I realized something else. My sister's violence, even her small version of it, had been possible because there was no consequence. She hit, and the adults erased it. So she hit again. And again. And somewhere in her 17-year-old brain, she learned that hurting people was something she could do. By holding the boundary, by forcing a consequence, my father had actually done something for my sister too. He'd given her the information that some things have costs. That you can't just move through the world hurting people, and have everyone pretend it didn't happen. She didn't understand that at the time. She was 17 and righteous and sure everyone was being unfair. But I do think she understands it now. She's 23. She's been in relationships, had her own conflicts. Last year, she sent me a long text where she actually acknowledged what she'd done. Not as a justification but as something she regretted. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't everything I needed to hear. But it was real. I didn't let her alone with my daughter that day. I'm not there yet. But maybe someday. There's a morning I keep coming back to. Maybe a year after all of this. My daughter, she's almost 2 now, had been sick. Just a cold, but enough to make her cranky and tired. I was at my parents' house because my mom had offered to help, and I needed it. My father was at work. It was just the 3 of us. My daughter was sitting on my mom's lap, and she was doing that thing small kids do where they're just barely awake, their eyes half closed, their body heavy and warm. My mom was singing something soft, something she used to sing to me, actually. A lullaby I hadn't heard in decades. And I realized that nothing about my mother had fundamentally changed. She was still the person who would rationalize away difficult moments. She was still the person who defaulted to comfort over conflict. But I had changed. I had become someone who could sit with my mother, love her, and simultaneously understand that I could not trust her with the thing that mattered most to me, that used to feel tragic. Now it just feels like clarity. Here's what I think people don't tell you about boundaries. They don't fix relationships. They don't make everything okay. Sometimes they make things harder, because they require you to show up again and hold the line, even when it would be easier to let it slip, even when you miss the person on the other side of it. But they do one important thing. They teach the people you love that you love them too much to accept being diminished by them. They teach your children, not with words but with actions, that they matter more than anyone's comfort, that their safety is non-negotiable, that there are people in the world who will fight for them. And if you're listening to this and you've ever had a moment like this, where someone you loved dismissed your child's pain, or your pain, or the pain of someone you were trying to protect, I want you to know something. You're not overreacting. You're not being unfair. You're not being unkind. You're being a human being who loves someone, and you're doing what humans do. You're trying to protect what you love. That's the most primal, true thing we do. It's not complicated. It's just necessary. My father didn't have to save me that day. Technically, I could have handled it myself. I would have eventually, because I had to. But the fact that he showed up, that he didn't just listen to my story but treated it with the gravity it deserved, that mattered in a way I'm still understanding. It mattered because it told me something I needed to know. That I'm worth fighting for. That my child is worth fighting for. That this is the standard. This is what it looks like when someone loves you. I see my daughter now, and she's becoming herself. She's confident and loud, and she knows her own mind. She'll tell you exactly what she thinks about things. She's not afraid of conflict. She just approaches it directly. I think my father gave her that. And he gave me permission to pass it on.